In this video, we're going to talk about how to read your glasses or contact lens prescription. So, did you have an exam with an optometrist or ophthalmologist recently? Did they write you a prescription for glasses, contact lenses, whether they're the soft contact lenses, the rigid gas permeable or RGP contact lenses, or did you even have something like a specialty contact lens, like a sclera lens that was made up? When you get your prescription, there's going to be some numbers, there's going to be some terms, there's going to be, whether it's a paper or a digital copy or whatever you might receive, there's going to be some things on there that you'll want to be aware of to know what it means and what your prescription actually is. Farsightedness, nearsightedness, astigmatism, presbyopia, prismatic correction, all that kind of stuff. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the first number you're going to see on your prescription. That's going to be this little thing up top called SPH. That stands for sphere. That's one meridian on which light travels through your eyes to get to your retina to send vision onto your brain. Now the sphere can often be defined as usually farsightedness or nearsightedness. And I apologize for those of you in mathematics because you're going to probably hate it when I say this, but we usually refer to it as plus and minus, plus referring to farsighted prescriptions, minus referring to nearsighted prescriptions. We don't really call it positive or negative, just because it's kind of a mouthful to say, but usually we'll just call it plus and minus. Now, when it comes to plus and minus, farsightedness, nearsightedness, we associate farsightedness with the plus prescription. So you could be a +1, a +2, even +20. I mean, all kinds of different things for what your prescription actually means. When you're plus or farsighted, that means light technically does not come to a landing point on your macula or your retina. It actually should be extending further back beyond the retina even. But your eye focuses, the lens focuses, the cornea helps bend the light to land on the retina, and you're living in a constant state of accommodation. Now, sometimes there will be a point where your eye cannot focus through this accommodation, and thus you're left with farsightedness prescription, meaning it gives you some difficulties in the distance, but it's going to give you a lot of difficulties for reading up close, for sure. Some people have what's known as an accommodative insufficiency or an accommodative problem, where their eyes don't focus very well from looking far away to reading up close, and a mild farsighted prescription or reading prescription or whatever the circumstance presents with whatever the chief complaint is, that can usually help correct that issue. Let's talk about minus and nearsightedness. Minus and nearsightedness is typically what we affiliate with when you have a better time reading up close than you do in the distance. Minus is usually referring to nearsightedness, that when you have a better time reading up close than you do in the distance, meaning you might need some correction like prescription glasses or contact lenses to drive or to see far away or something like that typically. Now, when it comes to minus and nearsightedness, a lot of times those folks will need help in order to determine where the light should land on the retina, because when light enters their eyes, it doesn't quite reach the retina, meaning that the light needs to be extended further back through prescription correction. And when you move the light further back, that actually allows a nearsighted person to see in the distance very well. Now you're going to come across another terminology on your prescription that's known as CYL. That's also referred to as cylinder. This is an astigmatic meridian that light also travels through, opposite and perpendicular to the spherical meridian. So think of it like a cross, that you can have spherical in one meridian the way we understand it, and you can have an astigmatic meridian in the opposite and yet perpendicular meridian. And astigmatism has a variety of forms and shapes and types and styles, and some of which we don't even understand fully to this day. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to talk about primarily three types of astigmatism. You have corneal astigmatism, lenticular astigmatism, and axial astigmatism. So corneal astigmatism typically refers to whenever someone has a cornea that's not perfectly round. That's my prescription. And then you have lenticular astigmatism, often caused by cataracts. And then you have axial astigmatism, often caused by someone having a very high amount of nearsightedness. And astigmatism, also known as the cylinder when you manufacture it in glasses or put it in contact lenses, this can actually have two variations in which it's written in the prescription. You can have plus cylinder and you can have minus cylinder. Plus cylinder is often used by ophthalmologists. Minus cylinder is often used by optometrists. This also has historical ties to how glasses were first manufactured, which was indeed plus cylinder. So if you ever get to trivia night, if you want to know if it's plus or minus cylinder that glasses were first fabricated in, it actually is plus cylinder, because that's what the machines only had capability to do originally, before minus cylinder was allowed to have astigmatism placed on the back side of the lens. Now, going back to where we're at for cylinder. Astigmatism and cylinder can be written, for in this case being an optometrist, in minus cylinder. So if you have a prescription of plus one sphere, minus one cylinder, that means you are farsighted with astigmatism. And the next component on your prescription is called the axis. The axis specifies what meridian the sphere is located in. So let's go back to that prescription I was talking about a few moments ago. You've got +1, -1, and axis 180. The axis tells me that the +1 is actually horizontally located. Now, the cylinder or astigmatism is actually located, as I mentioned earlier, perpendicularly or opposite of where the spherical meridian is at. So the astigmatic meridian, which in this case would actually be technically powered 0, is located at 90 degrees going up and down on the cornea. And that is how axis works. And then when you have plus cylinder, it's kind of the opposite. You transpose, you move the prescription around. So what would this look like in a plus cylinder prescription format? So +1, -1, axis 180. What is that in plus cylinder? That's actually going to be 0.00 plus 1 at axis 90. See what I did there? So the spherical meridian in a plus cylinder prescription is actually going to be 0 going up and down. Now, when you go horizontally, you go +1 for the cyl or the astigmatism. That's actually correct. When you look at a minus cylinder and a plus cylinder prescription, I know my brain kind of exploded trying to talk all that out. But this is why it's important that you know the differences in how the two prescriptions can be written. And then we're going to talk about the ad. So if you're under the age of 40, you're probably not going to have much familiarity with this. If you're over the age of 40, you're going to have some familiarity with this. You'll have difficulty reading up close, and you need reading glasses, bifocals, progressives, trifocals, things like that to help you read better up close. The ad power specifies what's going to get you best reading at what focal distance you want. By default, a lot of us eye care professionals have a focal point testing distance of about 16 inches, 40 centimeters. Now, if you have other focal distances, like if you want to cut food easier, or if you play a lot of music and you need sheet music at a certain distance, work on the computer a lot. I work with a lot of folks that have those visual demands that want that as their focal distance. And that needs to be considered when you're writing the prescription, or when you're analyzing the prescription, or you're trying to just simply want to understand how your prescription's written. So the ad power specifies how much plus magnification is induced at a near reading range to help you see more clearly. And then there's a number going to be after that called prism. Prism is a strange one. Prism is allowing us to bend light in a certain orientation to make it line up with the retina more correctly. If there is an eye turn, if there is some kind of lazy eye, if there is something like that. There's not a lot of prism out there, but there is a ton of it at the same time, because a lot of people have eye functional focusing disorders that doesn't allow them to see one image clearly. For example, if they're driving, or if they're trying to watch TV, or they see double, that may require a prismatic prescription. That may require vision therapy. That may require surgery. There's a lot of different options in which this can go down. And that's why it's important to talk to your eye care professional about which option is going to be best if that's going to be handled. I was just talking with my colleague not too long ago, and there's different things that we see a lot of prism in place for to help people fuse the images together in which they're seeing too off in the distance, to bring it into one image to help them function on a day-to-day basis. There's another terminology on prescriptions. On some of them you might see sometimes, mostly for the manufacturing laboratory, but this is going to be called BC, also known as base curve. That has to do with the curvature of the lens in which it's going to be manufactured. It can be higher in number, it can be lower in number, it can be steeper, it can be flatter, all of which the professionals manufacturing your glasses are going to know what that base curve of that lens should be for your prescription. It's not really to indicate much other than just telling the laboratory what the base curve of this lens is. And usually the laboratory will know what kind of base curve to put depending on what kind of prescription it is. That's where you leave it to the experts on that. There's another terminology on prescriptions called the PD, the pupillary distance. This is the distance between one pupil of one eye and the pupil of another eye, and this is measured by your professionals such as opticians, optometrists, ophthalmologists that do this regularly and consistently. It's important to have that done by someone that measures it every single day. You can measure your own, not very effective unless you're doing it every single day, because you might be off a millimeter or two, and if you have a pretty high prescription or a pretty intense prescription, or if it's not made to your specifications, then you could be significantly off in vision and have a very difficult time adjusting to the lenses, the frames, whatever may go on. So it's important to have your PD measured by the professional, usually the ones that are going to be making your glasses up, to make sure that you can see clearly off in the distance, up close, drive safely, and not cause an accident or be a hazard for other people. And at the bottom of the prescription, you'll have the signature of the eye care professional that wrote your prescription, and this is done by optometrists and ophthalmologists. And there's an expiration date on how long the glasses or contact lens prescription is actually good for. A lot of states, at least in the United States, it's typically about 1 year, because usually we recommend once a year annual eye exams. Some states it might be 2 years for contact lenses or glasses, for as long as your prescription's good for. But either way, that's what the expiration date is at the bottom. Sometimes there will be a license number by the professional prescribing it. Sometimes there will be some other stuff down there, but all of which ties back to the professional that wrote your glasses or contact lens prescription that should be allowing you to see better in the distance as well as up close, as well as anything else in between. That's what you're going to want to know when it comes to your prescription, so you can have a better idea of what's going to be put into your glasses and into your contact lenses. The lens manufacturing process and the contact lens manufacturing process is extremely complicated with a lot of moving parts, pieces, and variables, and you got to have all that information correct on the prescription in which the doctor wrote in order to get you seeing your best. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell for notifications and to learn more about your eyes. I'm Dr. Bryce Heffington, and we'll see you next time.